The second one up the mountain takes upon himself perhaps even more risk than the first. The journey has already been accomplished, so merely matching the deeds of the one before him is no special feat. Exceeding the acts of the first is the second's priority. He must appear grander, more colorful, more heroic. The second must do better than the first. He has to. Although this mountain was originally traversed by Altair in 2007, Ezio presented himself to the stage 2 years later and had something to prove. The foundation of the original Assassin's Creed set forth a rich and intricate world of revisionist imagination. Where could the story go from there? Is Ezio one who could take the torch that was passed to him and outdo the expectations Altair laid out? Could he drive the narrative the audience was so curious of into a more complex and deeper place? Yes, he could. I'm an organized type of guy, so I like to break up my videos into sections that are absolutely pure. I don't like mixing the gameplay with the story, and I especially don't enjoy mixing the story summary with my critique of it. So I'm going to continue doing this. Let me know if you think it better to change it up. Like my other look back videos, I am going to be attempting to combine the perspectives of playing the game from its time of creation to the experience of playing it after more than a decade of existence. If I sound too critical or too lenient at any time during this script, this combination is probably the reason why. This game has many names that are not only hard to say and pronounce, but also remember. Unlike the first Assassin's Creed, this game has a plethora of characters that Ezio interacts with. I will try to help my audience remember these characters by putting up pictures or giving them nicknames. I haven't decided yet. Although I might not be the most talented vessel to pronounce these names correctly, I will nonetheless do it as best I can, as I find it fun to try. Forgive the butchering of any names I butcher attempting to do this. I also want to repeat my goal of remaining unadulterated during this look back. I will not be including neither development nor performance information. I want my audience to receive the full Assassin's Creed 2 experience with just the gameplay and story of this title only. This video will be divided into story discussion, and gameplay sections. Let's do it. The year is 1476 in Renaissance Italy. We are introduced to Ezio Auditore, a rash, eccentric, and rather reckless 17-year-old who is currently in a fight with a gang led by Vieri from the Pazzi family. He wins the fight and gets called upon by his older brother, Federico, who wants him to not only go to a local doctor to treat his wounds, but also return home in order to meet up with his family.
It is a good life we lead, brother.
The best. May it never change.
And may it never change us.
Ezio declines, deciding to stop off at Cristina Vespucci's house, a lover of his, for the night.
Ezio, let Cristina sleep.
There will be time enough for that. Later.
Oh, Ezio.
The next day, he gets chased out of the house by her father and meets up with his own, Giovanni. Giovanni asks his son to deliver a letter to Lorenzo de' Medici, a statesman and the de facto ruler of the Florentine Republic. The letter contains information pertaining to the recent murder of a duke, Galeazzo Sforza. Giovanni writes in the letter his belief that Francesco Pazzi, a member of the Pazzi family and father to Vieri, the gang leader from earlier, was involved. The letter was never to be delivered though, for when Ezio arrived, Lorenzo was not there to receive it. He returns home to his mother, Maria, who asks him to help her run an errand.
Self-expression is vital to understanding and enjoying life. You should find an outlet.
I have plenty of outlets.
I meant besides vaginas.
Mother.
She mentions that Giovanni will be speaking at Francesco's trial, as he is the only one with supposed evidence of Francesco's involvement in the Sforza murder. We then meet Leonardo da Vinci, an up-and-coming artist in the region. He greets Ezio and mentions to him that he aspires to work on more than art, as he holds interest in many things, a fact that will become absolutely crucial to Ezio's journey later on. Giovanni summons Ezio once again to deliver more letters. 2 letters were to be delivered to his contacts throughout the city, while a third was to be collected from a local pigeon coop. Before leaving, he meets Uberto Alberti, a councilman of justice in Firenze and a close family friend of the Auditores. Encounters with the recipients of these letters confuses Ezio, however, and seeing guards running frantically around the city has him running back home in a panic. After arriving, he notices his house ransacked, his sister and mother hiding and crying, and his brothers and father missing. He's notified by his housemaid that they were taken to jail, and he runs off to locate Giovanni. He travels to the jail cell his father is being held in, and is told to go back home, find a hidden room in the house, take everything in that room, and deliver another letter to Uberto.
Beyond lies a chest. Take everything you find inside. Much of it may seem strange to you, but all of it is important. Do you understand?
Yes.
He returns home, finds the room and a chest inside it. Inside this chest rests a strange robe and a wrist blade, although the blade is broken. He dons the unusual attire and travels to Uberto.
My father and brothers have been imprisoned. I was told to bring you this.
I see now. It's a misunderstanding, Ezio. I'll clear everything up.
How?
The documents you've given me contain evidence of a conspiracy against your family and against the city. I'll present these papers at their hearing in the morning, and they'll be released.
Thank you, Signore.
Uberto takes the letter and assures Ezio that everything will end up alright, as his influence will help his brothers and father be set free shortly. The next day, he attends the acquittal trial of his family, only to find Uberto at the head of the hanging, with his brothers and father tied.
Giovanni Auditore, you and your accomplices stand accused of the crime of treason. Have you any evidence to counter this charge?
Yes, the documents that were delivered to you last night!
I'm afraid I know nothing of these documents.
He's lying!
Seeing the betrayal of Uberto denying the existence of the acquitting letters given to him earlier, Ezio attempts to rescue them but is forced to retreat. His father, Giovanni, and his brothers, Federico and Petruccio, are no more. He runs away to his housemaid's sister's home, where he meets Paola, the keeper of a brothel in the city. He yearns to leave immediately and kill Uberto and get revenge, but she stops him, instead wanting to teach him how to use her girls to navigate through the city unseen.
I understand your desire for vengeance, but the Gonfaloniere is a powerful man. You are not a killer, Ezio.
Spare me the lecture.
But I can make you one.
Why are you going to teach me how to kill?
I'm not. I'm going to teach you how to survive.
After, she tells him to go visit Leonardo and assures him that his mother and sister are safe in her care. Ezio visits him, where Leonardo takes the broken wrist blade and uses a codex page found in Giovanni's chest to fix it.
There, it's finished.
Huh? What's finished?
The blade. I managed to decode that parchment of yours. It showed me exactly what to do. Now all that's left is to remove your ring finger.
Really?
I'm sorry, but this is how it must be done. The blade is designed to ensure the commitment of whoever wields it.
Bene. Do it quickly.
I was only having fun, Ezio. Though the blade once required a sacrifice, it's been modified. You can keep your finger.
Leo, ever curious and interested in anything needing difficulty and mechanical prowess, fixes the contraption. Ezio returns to Paola to inform her that he is ready to take Uberto's life. Traveling to an art show, he overhears Uberto meeting with Lorenzo de' Medici, now Prince of Firenze. When Uberto is alone, he overhears more talk with other powerful members of the city, where they fear the still-alive son of the Auditore family, Ezio. It seems there is a major conspiracy amongst the elite that the Auditore family was planning a very many evils throughout the city. Ezio takes action and kills Uberto.
You would have done the same. To save the ones you love.
Yes, I would. And I have. The Auditori are not dead! I'm still here! Me! Ezio! Ezio Auditore!
He proclaims to the crowd that the Auditore name still lives through him, and that he is not going away anytime soon. He escapes the area. Ezio tells Paolo of his deeds, takes his mother and sister, and runs to his uncle's villa in the mountains. Right before he gets there, they are ambushed by Vieri Pazzi once more, who wishes to erase the family name for good. Ezio's uncle, Mario, arrives to help the group get out safe. In a span of almost 2 years, Ezio trains with and learns from Mario about his father, his family's legacy, the Assassins, and the Templars. Ezio fosters his skills in combat and climbing, and also arms himself with the knowledge and philosophy of the Assassins, although he is not sure he wants anything to do with his family heritage yet. Mario, convincing Ezio to stay instead of leaving to Spain with his mother and sister for their protection, urges Ezio to join him and his men on a daring assault on Vieri's center of operations.
It's settled. Vieri, you will remain here to coordinate the mercenary. Francesco will organize all forces in the city and send word when it's time to strike. Jacopo, your job is to calm the citizens once the deed is done.
What of that Ubriacone Mario? He continues to harass my forces, and I fear he'll discover what we intend.
He's always been trouble. Just like that bastardo brother of his.
Then let me reunite them, father.
There will be plenty of time to clean up the rifiuti when we're finished. Now, is there anything else? Muy bien. May the Father of Understanding guide you.
May the Father of Understanding guide you.
Ezio tags along, and in 1478 he assassinates Vieri and ends his plan to eliminate the Auditore name.
What are you and your allies planning? Is this what my father discovered? Is this why he was killed?
I'm sorry. Were you hoping for a confession?
Ezio, desiring to once and for all end the Pazzi plot against his family, travels to Firenze to assassinate Francesco, Vieri's father and an even higher member of the Templar Brotherhood. He meets with La Volpe, a mysterious leader of the city's thieves guild, who provides him with information on how to locate his target. Ezio infiltrates an underground meeting with almost all the Templar leaders in Italy present. Jacopo, the head of the Pazzi family, Francesco, Jacopo's nephew, Bernardo, the Pazzi's banker, Stefano, a monk and a secretary to Jacopo, and Rodrigo Borgia, a cardinal of the Catholic Church and Grand Master of the Templar Order. Ezio overhears a plot to overthrow the Medici family in Firenze and take control of the region for the Templars. Meeting back with La Volpe, they discuss actions they must take to end the threat. Ezio moves quickly, attempting to intercept the attack on the statesman and protect the leadership. Lorenzo is attacked and wounded, but Ezio manages to fight off the forces involved and escort him somewhere safe. Lorenzo thanks Ezio for saving him and implores him to kill Francesco and save the city from the coup.
Now Firenze will judge you for what you've done.
It's over. It's all over.
Ezio complies, kills Francesco, and presents his body to the city to disband both the conspirators and their supporters. Jacopo is stunned to see his nephew's now lifeless body and flees. Meeting up with his uncle, Ezio provides Mario with a list of Jacopo's conspirators found on Francesco's body. Mario sends out scouts to locate the men while he trains his nephew in more advanced combat techniques. Some time passes, and Mario's scouts return with the location of the conspirators. Mario sends Ezio out to conduct the raids with his men and assassinate them. Ezio targets Stefano first. Being a monk, Stefano is difficult to identify inside the abbey he resides in, but Ezio is able to decipher his identity using a sixth sense known as Eagle Vision and take him down.
Now I will see who was right.
Where is Jacopo?
Nothing to fear, I suppose. They meet in the shadow of the Roman gods.
Next in line is Archbishop Francesco Salviati, who has barricaded himself inside one of his villas. Ezio raids the compound with his uncle's men and kills the Archbishop. Ezio keeps going, locating Bernardo Baroncelli, chasing him down and killing him. Last of the conspirators is Antonio Maffei, who has had a bit of a mental breakdown as a result of all the recent assassinations. He is atop a tower in one of their cities, rambling on to the people about Templar animosity toward the Assassin Brotherhood. All of what he is saying is being masqueraded as religious discourse. Ezio climbs the tower and puts an end to his sermon. Ezio, having eliminated the list of Jacopo's men, moves against Jacopo Pazzi himself. He finds him, but decides to tail him, where he hopes to locate other members he had eavesdropped on earlier in the story. After navigating through the area unseen, he happens upon the meeting with the other members, including Emilio Barbarigo, a powerful merchant and Lord of Venice, and most notably, Rodrigo Borgia, the Templar Grand Master. Rodrigo, understandably, is furious with Jacopo, having entrusted Firenze's coup with the Pazzi family and it failing, having multiple members of the Templar Brotherhood found and eliminated forever, the Auditore family surviving through Ezio's continued living, and also having their plans for the Firenze coup made known to their enemies as a whole. Jacopo begs for forgiveness and understanding, appealing to Rodrigo's underestimation of Ezio's ability, but fails. The Grand Master rebuffs him and sticks a knife in his stomach. While Jacopo reels from the pain, Rodrigo turns and speaks to our hero. He knew we were here the entire time. He orders his men to kill Ezio, who offers his captors their lives if they spare him. They refuse the offer, and Ezio manages to fight off the Templar guards as both Rodrigo and Emilio flee. Ezio ends Jacopo's suffering and escapes.
Vai, amico. Libero da fardelli e paure. Requiescat in pace.
Ezio meets up with Lorenzo, now healed from his wounds, who thanks the young man for his efforts. Lorenzo, not much for violence, regrets where events have led to, and hopes the entire conflict with the leadership in the region ends soon. Ezio informs him that the conspirators have collaborated on the corruption and takeover of Venice, where he intends to head next. The bloodshed has not stopped with the eradication of the Pazzi family, it seems. On his way to Venice, Ezio encounters Leonardo, who is seemingly transporting a carriage holding a new invention of his, an invention he claims provides a man the ability to fly. Ezio joins Leo on his journey when they are ambushed by foot soldiers working for Rodrigo. After crashing like a fucking after a daring trek through the mountainside, Ezio and Leonardo are able to escape unharmed. Ezio, not having a pass to go to Venice, happens to meet a woman trapped on a nearby island. She introduces herself as Caterina Sforza, the daughter of the murdered Galeazzo Sforza, making her a countess. She commands the boat captain to let you aboard, and offers Ezio asylum and hospitality in her city, Forli, should he ever require it.
He won't trouble you anymore. I took care of it.
Thank you, Caterina.
Perhaps we'll see each other again. Should you ever find yourself in the city of Forli, it would be my pleasure to welcome you.
Crikey.
1481, Ezio arrives in Venice and takes a tour of the city with Leo. During the walk, he is robbed by a female street thief. He also witnesses several instances of guards in the city abusing their power with the people, who have apparently more or less accepted this behavior, as it has been occurring for some time. Leonardo arrives at his new workshop in the city, and Ezio immediately works on finding Emilio and ending the Venetian merchants' threat to the city. As he approaches the castle the Lord resides in, he witnesses several thieves run past him and into the compound, allowing the same thief from earlier to start scaling the castle to get inside. Her plans are foiled by some archers, however, and she is shot by an arrow through her leg. She begs Ezio for help in escaping, and he complies. Her name is Rosa, and she is part of the Thieves Guild in Venice. After rescuing her, Ezio then meets the leader of the guild, Antonio, who reveals that his group has been attempting to rid the district of Emilio and put an end to his oppression for some time now, but have continually failed. Although the two have differing reasons for putting an end to Emilio's life, they agree to work together to bring him down.
Your good work has restored us to our former strength, Ezio. We are ready to strike.
4 years go by, and the guild had licked its wounds from the unsuccessful operation at the castle when Ezio first arrived, and decides now is the time to strike again. Ezio infiltrates the palazzo under cover of night while the thieves distract the compound security and assassinates Emilio.
Do not be afraid.
I feel no fear, assassin. Only regret. I sought unity, stability, order.
At too great a cost.
Progress demands sacrifice.
Non trova alcuna gioia in questo, ma non c'è altro modo. Requiescat in pace.
Antonio meets Ezio and provides him information on Carlo Grimaldi, whom Ezio had overheard speaking with Emilio moments before he killed him. Carlo, who sits on the Council of Ten, is a government official and a member of the Venetian Great Council, and also happens to be the right-hand man to the Doge of Venice, Giovanni Mocenigo. Ezio conducts a number of investigations and is able to learn of another Templar meeting in the city. He locates Carlo and tails him to this meeting. It is known that the Barbarigo family not only consisted of Emilio, but also Marco and Silvio, both of whom are also Templars. Their plan is to have Carlo eliminate the Doge using poison and replace him with one of their own. Ezio and Antonio scout the Palazzo Ducale, the Doge's castle, and find no way to infiltrate the compound. Ezio, however, thinks he might still have a way to get inside and visits Leonardo. Imploring Leo to use his prototype flying machine, Ezio tests it out and realizes that it is not good enough to get him inside the Palazzo Ducale itself. It lacks longevity and distance. Leonardo thinks of a plan and believes that if there is a way to provide heated air beneath the machine, it would have the strength to go further and higher. The three come up with a plan to have Antonio's men build multiple fires along Ezio's flight path and offer the machine consistent velocity and carry him into the castle. Ezio takes flight and glides his way through the city into the compound, where he attempts to save the Doge from the murder.
Stop! Signore, don't drink that!
You are too late. The Doge is dead.
What? Carlo?
Apologies, Signore. But you should have listened to me when you had the chance. Seems you have failed, assassin.
Forgive me, Signore. I tried.
He is too late, however, and Carlo manages to poison him. Carlo, fleeing the scene of the crime, proclaims to the guards and people in the castle that the Doge was murdered by a young man chasing after him. Ezio catches up to him, though, and eliminates Carlo before escaping the area.
It takes one assassin to kill another, it seems.
We kill thinking it's best for us. Do we not, Messer Ezio?
I do this not for myself. Compio questo sacrificio per il bene superiore. Requiescat in pace.
Ezio meets up with Leonardo, telling him it is going to be near impossible for him to move throughout the district now that he is the city's most wanted man. Luckily for him, it is the time for the carnival in the region, and asks the artist for a mask to wear to operate freely once again. Totally incognito, bro. They'll never see you coming. Ezio goes to meet Sister Teodora and Antonio at a brothel in the city, where Antonio lets Ezio know that the new Doge, Marco Barbarigo, never leaves his castle for fear of assassins. Teodora, however, informs Ezio that once a year, the carnival has a special event wherein people can compete to win a golden mask that allows entry into the annual Doge Ball. Ezio competes and wins all contests to receive the golden mask, but Silvio Barbarigo makes sure the head of the Venetian Guard and fellow Templar, Dante Moro, is awarded the mask instead. Ezio retrieves the stolen mask and enters the ball with Teodora. The Doge presents himself to the crowd, and Ezio uses his newly crafted hidden blade pistol mechanism to shoot him down.
No. It's too soon. I'm not ready.
We rarely are. Che la morte non sia crudele. Requiescat in pace.
You must be exhausted. Come, relax.
Ah, the savior of Venezia. What can I say? Perhaps it was wrong of me to doubt so readily. Now, we'll see where all the pieces fall.
Enough of that now. You've worked hard, my son. I feel your tired body in need of comfort and succor.
Ezio meets Agostino Barbarigo, the late Doge's brother, and learns he will be taking his place as the new Doge. Agostino comments that although his brother was bought by the Borgia family and worked for them throughout his years in the government and as Doge, Agostino intends not to make this mistake and requests their trust. Ezio, Agostino, and Antonio discuss their plans to rid the world of Silvio, who has fled to and taken control of La Arsenal with a force of over 200 mercenaries. Ezio, ever motivated to end this plot, desires to raise an army himself that can challenge this force while he takes care of Silvio. Antonio tells him to meet Bartolomeo d'Alviano, a local mercenary leader. Bartolomeo tells Ezio they should split up to position his mercenaries in tactical locations to attack La Arsenal together. In the commotion, Ezio will enter the compound and assassinate both Silvio and Dante.
What's happened here? Why the boats? I thought you sought the Doge's seat.
Just a distraction. We were meant to sail.
Sail where?
I'll never tell. Cyprus is their destination. They want...
Non temete l'oscurità. Accettate il suo abbraccio. Requiescant in pace.
After accomplishing this task, he learns that the Templars were not planning to once again take the Doge position, but to move on Cyprus for some other nefarious purpose. Ezio thanks and says goodbye to Bartolomeo and his men.
It's been over 10 years since I watched my father and brothers die. 10 years hunting the men responsible. So close to the end now, but no closer to understanding what any of it was for.
You may not see it, Ezio, but it's better here now because of the things you've done. Basta. Look here. I have a birthday present for you. It's L'Arsenale's shipping manifest. From the day the boat left.
The boat to Cyprus? You're serious?
And guess when it's scheduled to return? Tomorrow.
Ezio. Leonardo, when did you get back?
Just now. I need to talk to you. Right away.
Leonardo meets with Ezio to discuss some of his findings from a number of the Codex pages that he has been researching. Throughout the years, Ezio has been stealing them from the Templars and bringing them to Leo for him to decipher. They logically work through the findings and believe to discover the truth behind all the events that have happened in the last 10 years. For it has been a full decade since the fateful Auditore trial. Ezio finds out that the Cyprus fleet that sailed some time ago is bound to return the next day, and locates the port at Doxin. There, Ezio sees, for the first time, the Apple of Eden, being brought upon the shores of Venice. He also notices his uncle Mario, who had apparently found out about this moment too, and is here to witness the delivery. Ezio tails a courier involved in the cargo's delivery and takes his place. The package is then delivered to the Cardinal personally, and Ezio reveals himself to the Grand Master. The two engage in combat, and when Rodrigo calls for reinforcements, Ezio gets his own, in the form of all the prior characters from the story coming to his aid. Rodrigo flees, and Ezio has stopped the Templar from retrieving the apple. After the fight, the group revealed themselves to all be Assassin Brotherhood members, who have been training and mentoring Ezio for years to welcome him into the Brotherhood. He meets Machiavelli, another member of the Assassins, and an induction ceremony is held. Ezio is now an official member of the Order.
These are the words spoken by our ancestors that lay at the heart of our creed.
Where other men blindly follow the truth, remember,
nothing is true.
Where other men are limited by morality or law, remember,
everything is permitted.
We work in the dark to serve the light. We are assassins.
Nothing is true.
Everything is permitted.
It is time, Ezio. In this modern age, we are not so literal as our ancestors, but our seal is no less permanent. Are you ready to join us?
I am.
This only hurts for a while, brother. Like so many things.
Benvenuto, Ezio. You are one of us now. Come, we have much to do.
Mario, Machiavelli, and Ezio meet with Leonardo to examine the strange artifact. Ezio accidentally activates the apple, causing them to go into a short bout of disorientation before deactivating it and bringing them back to their senses. Realizing just the surface of the artifact's power, they task Ezio with its protection and safekeeping by going to Fortli. Fortli is home to yet another assassin ally, Caterina, who holds a fortress that will act as a perfect place to keep it away from the Templars. Ezio travels to Fortli with Machiavelli and meets with Caterina. He is surprised to learn of a woman being in control of her own castle and district, but learns that it was previously owned by her now deceased husband. She had him killed after the assassins figured out he had been working with the Templars for some years, crafting maps that show additional locations of Codex pages in the continent. Suddenly, the area comes under attack by the very men she had used to kill her husband, the Orsi mercenary group. It seems the Cardinal had hired them to turn on her and take the area to retrieve not the apple, but the maps her husband had drawn out years prior. The Orsi have started a massive attack, and the three join with Caterina's forces in the stronghold to retake the castle. After some time fending off the assault as best they could, the three are called upon by the two leaders, the Orsi brothers, for not only the map from Caterina, but also the Apple of Eden, threatening to kill her captured children if their demands are not satisfied. Ezio sneaks out of the stronghold, saves her children, and kills one of the brothers. When he returns to the castle, both Machiavelli and Caterina inform Ezio that the second brother attacked again while Ezio was away, and managed to steal the apple from them. Ezio catches up to the brother and kills him, retrieving the apple once again.
So, you have your prize again.
Was it worth it? So much bloodshed.
A prize of such value. It will not remain yours for long.
We shall see. Le miserie nascono dall'avidità. Requiescat in pace.
In the chase, Ezio was wounded badly, and after the retrieval, becomes unconscious. Right before he passes out, he witnesses a man dressed as a monk and missing a finger, picking up the apple and fleeing with it.
Wait. Don't. Who are you? Stop. Don't open it.
Caterina nurses Ezio back to health and tells Ezio to look for the mysterious monk in a nearby abbey, where he immediately begins investigating the identity of the thief. He learns that the man's name was Savonarola and resides in Firenze. Nine years later, in 1497, Ezio returns to a very different Firenze. In an event known in history as the Bonfire of the Vanities, Machiavelli explains to Ezio that the monk has used the apple to take control of the leadership in the city. With the knowledge that the monk holds the apple and that the Templars know that it is here, Ezio acts quickly to regain possession of the artifact as fast as possible before more harm is done or before it falls once more into Templar hands. Ezio and Machiavelli plot to stir up discontent with the people, and while they cause uproars around the city, Ezio can strike Savonarola down and grab the apple. Ezio travels to each district, assassinating the mind-controlled leaders, and uses the confusion caused amongst the populace to lure the monk out of hiding. Savonarola reaches out with the apple in hand in an attempt to take control of the masses' minds, but La Volpe stops him by throwing a dagger at his arm. The monk drops the apple and is taken away by the crowd. Some random guard picks up the apple, and Ezio chases him down to retrieve it once again for the third and final time. The people of Firenze tie Savonarola on a pyre, intending to burn him alive, where Ezio intervenes and kills him, wanting to avoid a supposedly cruel execution.
It's you. I knew this day would come. Please, show mercy.
I have. Ma ora, che sia il tuo Dio a giudicarti. Requiescat in pace.
Silenzio! Silenzio! 22 years ago, I stood where I stand now and watched my loved ones die, betrayed by those I had called friends. Vengeance clouded my mind. It would have consumed me, were it not for the wisdom of a few strangers who taught me to look past my instincts. They never preached answers, but guided me to learn from myself. We don't need anyone to tell us what to do. Not Savonarola, not the Medici. We are free to follow our own path. There are those who will take that freedom from us. Too many of you gladly give it. But it is our ability to choose whatever you think is true that makes us human. There is no book or teacher to give you the answers, to show you the path. Choose your own way. Do not follow me or anyone else.
is a map of the entire world. But there are lands shown here that do not exist.
Apparently they do exist. I imagine they've yet to be discovered. Or rediscovered.
How is this possible?
Perhaps the vault will hold the answer.
Do you see where it is, then?
No. It can't be. The vault. It looks like the vault is in Roma, then the Spaniard. This is why he became Pope.
Now I understand. It's not the vault alone he's gained access to, but the staff as well.
What staff?
The Codex always spoke of 2 keys. 2 pieces of Eden needed to open the vault. One is the apple.
And the other is the staff. The papal staff is the second piece of Eden.
For years, no, decades, we've sought these answers.
And now, at last, we have them.
But so too could the Spaniard. And if he does, if he finds a way into the vault, its contents will make the apple seem a trifling thing.
I must go to Roma and find the vault.
Ezio, after finding all the Codex pages in the region, travels back to Montedegione and meets up with the Assassin Order to discuss next steps. They converse about how the papal staff is the second piece of Eden one needs, in addition to the apple, to open up some sort of ancient vault in Rome. The group finally understands what makes popes so strong in their influence over the Christian church, and why Rodrigo chose the religious route to attain any sort of power. Armed with these realizations, Ezio intends to end this Templar threat once and for all. A year later, in 1499, Ezio travels to Rome and infiltrates the Sistine Chapel, where Rodrigo Borgia is holding a sermon.
Visibilium omnium et invisibilium. Et in unum Dominum Jesum Christum, Filium Dei unigenitum, et ex Patre natum ante omnia saecula. Deum de Deo, lumen de lumine, Deum verum de Deo vero. Genitum non factum consubstantiarem Patri, perquem omnia facta sunt, qui propter nos homines et proper nostram salutem descendit de celis, et incarnatus est de Spiritus Sancto ex Maria Virgine et homo factus est. Crucifixus etiam pro nobis.
I thought I was beyond this. But I'm not. I've waited too long. Lost too much. Requiescat in pace, you bastard.
I don't think so.
Ezio attacks from above, but fails to assassinate him when the Pope unleashes the power of the Staff of Eden. They square up to fight, and Ezio is able to resist the power of Borgia's staff due to his possession of the apple. Ezio then duplicates himself, much like Al-Mualim so many years earlier, and engages the Grand Master. After almost winning, Ezio was disarmed by Rodrigo of both his weapons and the apple, taking it for himself and entering the vault.
Open, damn you! Open!
It's over, Rodrigo. No more tricks. No more ancient artifacts. No more weapons.
Ezio follows him inside and challenges him to a hand-to-hand fight, free of all tools and weaponry.
If that's how you want to play it.
Borgia accepts.
What do you even want with the vault, Rodrigo?
Don't you know what lies within? Or do you mean to tell me the great and powerful assassins didn't figure it out?
Figure what out?
God. It's God that dwells within.
You expect me to believe that God lives beneath Il Vaticano?
A more logical location than a kingdom in a cloud, don't you think? Surrounded by singing angels and cherubim. Makes for a lovely image. But the truth is far more interesting.
Let's say I was to believe you. What do you think you'll do when you open that door?
I don't care. It's not approval I'm after. Just power.
And you think you'll give it up?
Whatever lies beyond that wall won't be able to resist the staff and apple. They were made for felling gods.
God is meant to be all-knowing, all-powerful. You think a couple of ancient relics can harm him?
You know nothing, boy. You take your image of the creators from an ancient book. A book, mind you, written by men.
You are the Pope, and yet you dismiss the central text of your faith?
Are you so naive? I became Pope because it gave me access.
It gives me power! Do you think I believe a single goddamn word of that ridiculous book? It's all lies and superstition, just like every other religious tract written over the past 10,000 years.
You can't! You can't! It's my destiny! Mine! I am the prophet!
You never were. Get it over with, then.
No. Killing you won't bring my family back. I'm done. Nulla è reale. Tutto è lecito. Requiescat in pace.
He defeats the Pope and interacts with the Pieces of Eden, opening the vault and being greeted by a mysterious, spiritual being. Dumbfounded and perplexed, Ezio realizes that he speaks to the spirits of one of the ones that came before.
Greetings, Prophet. It is good you have come. Let us see it, to give thanks. We must speak.
Who are you?
Many names. When I died, it was Minerva. Before that, Merva and Mera. And on and on. The others, too. Juno, who was before called Uni. Jupiter, who was before called Tinia.
You are... gods.
No, not gods. We simply came before. Even when we walked the world, your kind struggled to understand our existence. We were more advanced in time. Your minds were not yet ready. Still not. Maybe never. No matter. You may not comprehend us, but you will comprehend our warning. You must.
None of what you are saying makes sense.
Our words are not meant for you.
What are you talking about? There's no one else here.
Enough. I do not wish to speak with you, but through you. You are the prophet. You've played your part. You anchor him, but please be silent, that we may commune. Listen. When we were still flesh and our home still whole, your kind betrayed us. We who made you. We who gave you life. We were strong, but you were many, and both of us craved war. So busy were we with earthly concerns, we failed to notice the heavens. And by the time we did, the world burned until naught remained but ash. It should have ended then and there. But we built you in our own image. We built you to survive. And so we did. Few were our numbers, your kind and mine. It took sacrifice, strength, compassion. But we rebuilt. And as life returned to the world, we endeavored to ensure this tragedy would not be repeated. But now we are dying, and time will work against us. Truth turned into myth and legend. What we built, misunderstood. Let my words preserve the message and make a record of our loss. But let my words also bring hope. You must find the other temples, built by those who knew to turn away from war. They worked to protect us, to save us from the fire. If you can find them, if their work can be saved, so too might this world. Be quick, for time grows short, and guard against the cross, for there are many who will stand in your way. It is done. The message is delivered. We are gone now from this world. All of us. We can do no more. The rest is up to you, Desmond.
What? Who is Desmond? I don't understand. Please, wait. I have so many questions.
I think Ubisoft invented a time machine, traveled to the future, watched my video on the first Assassin's Creed, went back to the past, and designed this game. Everything I had problems with from the first game has been either corrected or improved. Well, almost. The protagonist's story, the protagonist itself, the supporting characters, the dialogue, gameplay, parkour, combat, movement, traversal, side missions, weapons, tools, hose, it's got everything. 15th century Italy is an absolutely beautiful location for a story like this, and the writers do a fantastic job consolidating real history into the Assassin's Creed narrative with this Italian setting. This is actually something I forgot to mention in my first Assassin's Creed look back video. In case anyone is not aware of this, Assassin's Creed is a revisionist story that takes real history and twists it into his narrative. Almost every character in these games is a real person from history, and both the individual's actions and dates of death in real life are identical in the Assassin's Creed plot, but the explanations for them have been changed. The same goes for all major events. Each event that occurs in game, like the Bonfire of Vanities for example, has actually happened in our real history, but in true Assassin's Creed fashion, the reasons for their occurrence are explained or justified in completely different ways. This is actually fascinating, because the reasons and causes of events that take place in the Assassin's Creed grand narrative wouldn't have been recorded. Neither the Templars nor Assassins would want their actions known to anyone outside the inner circle, so to speak. So our real life history being devoid of all the happenings in these games makes complete sense given the nature of the two factions' secrecy. The Assassins, for example, wouldn't want anyone knowing anything for obvious reasons. If they revealed the Templars' true motivation and desire, the goal and intent of total worldwide domination and control via ancient, prehistoric, and metaphysical artifacts, then the public would wind up being privy to the existence of the Pieces of Eden, and they can never account for every third-party observer. One of these observers could be inclined to join the fray, for lack of better terms, and attempt to acquire these artifacts, and now the Assassins are fighting not just the Templars, but the public too. The Templars, on the other hand, would of course not desire that eventuality, but would fear, perhaps even more so, the idea of the public knowing that most of the leaders of the planet are possibly working for their Brotherhood, which would most likely end up in revolution across the world for a multitude of justifiable reasons, or even support for the assassin cause. For example, historical records show the real Doge Giovanni Montenego's death is seemingly clouded in mystery, attributed to possible poisoning, right before Marco Barbarigo took up the mantle. Perfect. Just perfect. That said, let's move on to Ezio's story. Ubisoft wanted our heads to do a double take with a character that both captures our interest and actively drives the narrative forward. Unlike Altair, who is one that is pushed into his adventure by the actions, whims, and commands of others, Ezio advances his journey all on his own. This is a young man who is driven by revenge and justice, rather than compliance, and is made aware of events unfolding through committed investigation and genuine curiosity, rather than information dumping and willful confessions. Ezio is thrust into an adventure after a terrible tragedy that is his father and two brothers' execution. This came out of nowhere and really makes Ezio's actions from that point totally believable and justifiable, although I would have liked more time with his fallen family members before they were written off. Did any of you guys remember that Ezio had two brothers? I totally forgot about them. The fact that Giovanni commanded his son to take everything from the house before his execution, hoping that his allies in the Brotherhood would soon take Ezio under their wings, was a great catalyst for Ezio's story. Although it took quite a while for them to reveal themselves as assassins, we'll talk more about that in a minute, the characters that were introduced here are plenty, coupled with the fact that they actually have real impact on the narrative and feel like people we can actually care about. I do want to mention this little detail I loved. While traveling with Antonio in Venice, we reach the top of a Target building and a cutscene ensues. After it ends, I'm pretty sure 99.99% of players simply leap of faith off the building into the hay wagon down below, but what does Antonio do? He actually climbs down. He's an assassin. Leaps of faith are what they do. But Antonio and the other characters had not revealed themselves as Brotherhood members to Ezio yet. The developers could have just had him leap of faith off the building with Ezio, and hoped players wouldn't notice the absurdity of, to them, some random guy they just met pulling off one of the most amazing stunts in these games. To be fair, I don't think many of the players would have cared, but they lovingly included this detail of him climbing back down the building. A surprising little detail, but a welcome one to be sure. Small section here about the flying sequence. Ezio taking to the skies on an unknown piece of machinery never seen in the world before, desperately racing his way through arrow fire and the gorgeous skyline of Venice in an attempt to stop an assassination is just so amazing. I absolutely loved this mission, and Ezio just gets so many points in my book for just being a total badass in this sequence. What a king. I love Leonardo. His presence is such a great foil to the rather depressing and intense plotline following the exploits of a young man avenging his family's murder. Some of the only parts of the story where we see Ezio smiling and enjoying his interactions are with Leo, and I know why.
Ezio, you are still alive.
Look at this place. The past 2 years have been kind to you.
But you are not the same at all, are you?
I was hoping you might be able to help me with something.
Anything for you, my friend.
Leonardo!
Ezio? What luck! I have run into a bit of trouble.
Let me see if I can help.
My door is always open.
Grazie, my friend.
Di nulla.
You've done me good, brother.
Ma certo. But I'm sure your return was not just to play with new toys.
Grazie, Leonardo. Thank you for everything, my oldest friend.
Ubisoft making this famous artist into something more for the grand narrative is so compelling, and is one of my favorite things about this game, and series. Did anyone know he was an ally of the Assassin Brotherhood, who contributed to one of the most famous members' actions in a meaningful and impactful way? I thought not. It's not a story the Templars would allow the history books to tell you. Ezio is as personable as I remember, and I love it. He converses with others often, and is able to hold conversation effortlessly. Remember, throughout most of the story here, he is in his late teens to early 20s and seems to have no problems talking to those who are either above him socially or more dangerous than him politically. He is a young man who, driven by the events that tore his family apart, is one to rise up to virtually any challenge despite how fearful he might be. When Leonardo informs him that his newly received hidden blade required a finger to be removed in order to use it, Ezio promptly accepted the requirement and braced for the pain. Side note here, we learn later in the overall lore that Bayek, founder of the Hidden Ones in ancient Egypt, was in a hostile encounter with an enemy. When attempting to kill him, he clenched his fist and activated his hidden blade, inadvertently cutting off his own finger. The Assassins, a brotherhood that will come into existence following in the footsteps of the Hidden Ones, decided to use this event as a rite of passage and sever their fingers in turn to show commitment to the creed. Altair, many years later, studying and learning from the Apple of Eden after the events of the first game, concluded that if he was able to provide more space between the arm and blade, activation of the blade, even when the hand was clenched, would not encounter the fingers. Lengthy side note, but interesting nonetheless.
I was only having fun, Ezio. Though the blade once required a sacrifice, it's been modified. You can keep your finger.
When trying to find a way into the Doge's compound, he remembers Leonardo's glider and instantly, without evidence of it even being the least bit functional, asks Leo to use it. When charged with the protection of the apple, he accepts right then and there. When the apple is stolen later on during the Orsi assault, he immediately chases after it. He risks his life again and again and again. And remember, he isn't even an assassin for most of these occurrences. He's just a man with a purpose. Many of the villains in this game are randomly introduced to us at certain points in the story, but this is incredible. We are in the shoes of a young man who is attempting to find the answers to a plot he is completely unaware of. This plot takes him from town to town, city to city, borough to borough, and is actively uncovering the plot as much as we are. We are not introduced to these villains in some cutscene with Ezio absent. He's there with us and is just as surprised to learn of their existence as we are. We travel with Ezio and continually learn of how deep the Templar claws have dug into the host body that is Renaissance Italy. Now, I know what some people might be thinking, but Giovanni, Altair learned about the Templars in the same way we did in the first game. This is true. However, in the first Assassin's Creed, Altair kills these Templars as soon as we meet them. They aren't fleshed out or made into true characters. They're bad guys to be written out of the story. Here, in Assassin's Creed 2, almost all of these villains are actually characters that survive encounters with Ezio and live to die another day. They are recurring, persistent, and devious. They are numerous and have agents working in every level of the government and at every level of any other organization that can provide them with the power they seek so much. We don't know of the extent of their reach, and neither does Ezio, until we join him on his quest and learn together with our young hero. The failures of this age's Templar Brotherhood are apparent in this story, and this section might require a bit of Assassin's Creed lore to assist me in this point. An excerpt from the Assassin's Creed Encyclopedia defines it perfectly. During the 21st century, members of the Templar Inner Circle thought of Rodrigo Borgia as a debased tyrant instead of a respected Grand Master. Instead of spreading knowledge to enlighten his fellow man and break down the boundaries that keep men divided, Rodrigo used his power and position as Grand Master to corrupt the Templar purpose into gaining infinite power by any means. True Templar motives were questionable, but they intended to serve the greater good. Rodrigo, however, wanted power for the sake of it and saw total domination over all as his prize. The Borgia's leadership over the Order would later be known as the Dark Age of the Order. This is great, just great. I fucking love this series. Everything is so complex and intricate. Even the perceived villains in this series are given so much character. God, it's just good. It's just all so good. So, we see that this era of the Templar Brotherhood was hindered by the leadership of Rodrigo. Instead of furthering their aims or efficiently accomplishing their goals of leading humanity past the crises that they believe will inevitably develop over the coming centuries, Rodrigo chose to be selfish and egocentric, desiring power over everything. Say what you want about the big bad from the first game, but at least Al-Mualim had the motive and intent to utilize his supremacy to eradicate war, bloodshed, and chaos on the planet. Rodrigo just wanted authority and absolute power. The apple we are introduced to in this game is apple number 6. The apple that Altair interacted with and stopped Al-Mualim from using in the first game was apple number 2, and currently in the Assassin's Creed storyline, was destroyed underneath the Denver International Airport in the early 21st century. Apparently Daniel Cross was suffering a bout of the bleeding effect while the Templars were studying it for their space program and ended up killing everyone in the facility and somehow caused the destruction of the apple. This is interesting because while we aren't... Whoa, sorry. Got sidetracked there. The Assassin's Creed wiki is unbelievably addicting. It's hard to stop reading sometimes. Seriously, give it a try yourself. Look up someone you know from history on it, and the lore version of that person is right there for you to enjoy. Let's try again. The apple we're introduced to in this game is apple number 6. In 1453, Ottoman Sultan Mehmet II, Mehmet, he's Turkish, used it to conquer the city of Constantinople. About 30 years later, his son attempted to stage a coup and take the throne, but failed. He then stole the apple and desired to give it to the Templar Brotherhood in Italy to gain influence with them. Not to go too far into it, but this is why the fleet of Templar ships left Italy to depart to Cyprus in the story. 2 years after their departure date, they returned with the apple in hand. Incredible history, incredible revisionism, just incredible, and just so interesting. So, the highs in this game are incredibly high, but are there any lows? I am going to be a dickhead and critique the hell out of the stories of this title that I did not like. Let's begin. Ezio is clearly hurt by his family member's death in the beginning of the story, but rarely does this come up with any sense of consistency throughout the rest of the plot. I understand that time can heal all wounds eventually, a concept I truly believed. I absolutely love this line.
This only hurts for a while, brother. Like so many things.
But almost the entire story is hinging on this act of evil brought upon Ezio by the Templars, but seldom do we witness Ezio ever mourn their loss for any extended period of time. Now, I will say I don't think Ezio is a guy who is just going to run around proclaiming to everybody he meets, because he meets like 5,000 people during his journey, that he is just super de-duper sad because his daddy and bros were killed. But we couldn't get anything at all? How about a few conversations with those who knew his family? We get one with Lorenzo.
When I was 6 years old, I fell into the Arno. I soon found myself drifting down and into darkness. Certain my life was at an end. Instead, I woke to the sound of my mother weeping. At her side stood a stranger, soaking and smiling at me. My mother explained that he had saved me. And so began a long and prosperous relationship between two families. Yours and mine. I am sorry I could not save your father and brothers.
And we get that very small one with Rosa, but that one is cut off like 8 seconds in. Maybe we get one with his mother that I might have missed in the story, but we couldn't get any with Mario? With any of the other assassins that revealed themselves later? This is what his sister has to say.
Salute, Claudia.
You here to look at the book?
All I'm saying is that I loved Ezio, and his depth is something so many players fell in love with. I wanted more of him and his struggle. Shed those tears, bro! I am curious as to why the assassins in this story waited so long to reveal themselves. They had ample opportunities to explain to Ezio the history of the struggle against the Templars, and waited years to do it. One of their own was murdered by Templars, had a son that escaped the scandal, donned their own insignias and weaponry, carried out the very things they were sworn to do themselves, and boy did they take their sweet ass time bringing Ezio up to speed with what's really going on here. Nah, let's just allow this barely 20-something-year-old to wear our garb, basically represent our order out in broad daylight, steal, spy, investigate, and run around Italy murdering people for years before we shed any light on who we are and who he is to us. I am very, very confused about what Ezio knows of the Assassins and Templars. We have this clip here.
You said my father was more than just a banker.
No use dancing around it, I suppose. Your father was an assassin, Ezio.
All this talk of assassins and Templars, it reeks of fantasy.
You need to open your mind, Ezio. Always remember, nothing is true, everything is true. Don't think I haven't seen you picking apart my library. I trust you believe me now?
Yes, my father was an assassin. But why the need for such secrecy?
Are you familiar with the Templars? One of several knightly orders formed during the Crusades. History teaches they were disbanded nearly 200 years ago in France. Only they weren't. Merely pushed underground, where they continued their nefarious work. You want to leave, Ezio? To throw away everything your father fought and died for? To deny your heritage? Fine! Come vuoi. Arrivederci e buona fortuna.
Uncle, wait! Why is he so upset?
How can he not be? Vieri's been harassing us ever since you first arrived. To be expected, I suppose, given his heritage.
Ezio, what are you doing here?
Taking responsibility. Vieri troubles you because of me.
Vieri troubles us because he's a Templar, and we are assassins.
Either way, I wish to help.
And this kind of hints at the idea that Mario has taught him about the Assassins and Templars. But we never hear Ezio ever speak of them or ask any fucking questions. Even Rodrigo in the story is like, yo, you're trying to stop me, the Grand Master of the Templars, by yourself? Laugh out loud, where's your squad? And Ezio was like, the fuck are you talking about? It's kind of puzzling, and this disconnect throughout the story left me rather vexed. Why didn't they have Ezio know about this ancient war and their philosophies and stuff, and just have him ask a bunch of questions to Mario? Mario could have just been like, in time, Nipote, in time, and brushed him off, but instead we get nada. Annoying. This is another one of my issues with the story, by the way. This is an Assassin's Creed game, so we are subconsciously made to believe that everything we do as a character we play as, we can do, because this is an Assassin's Creed game. But think about it for a minute. We are traversing the landscapes of these cities more fluidly and feasibly than Altair could. We are able to undertake leaps of faith off the sides of buildings, engage 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, upwards of 10 to 15 men in combat at a time, and use swords, daggers, maces, clubs, knives almost expertly. This isn't even mentioning the fact that Leonardo gives us hidden blades before we even start training at Monteriggioni, and Ezio can not only assassinate people with little difficulty, but employ them in combat without a hint of hesitation or doubt. We can use all of these skills and more effortlessly before the training at Monteriggioni. Ubisoft understood that players were impatient with some of the design choices made in the first game. These design choices included, of course, taking the role of an assassin who is robbed of all equipment and even skills because of his demotion, made to play through repetitive mission after repetitive mission doing the same thing in order to acquire these things back. And these weren't small things to an assassin. Altair had knives, his sword, his dagger, even his ledge jump ability taken away, requiring players to play through the story to have these things returned to us. Ubisoft saw that these design choices were quite awful and left players scratching their heads, so they did a complete 180 and provided almost everything to Ezio right away. Not that this is a bad choice for the gameplay, it's just baffling for the story. I really hate the fact that this game started one of my most hated parts of the franchise, the inadvertent demeaning and insulting of the assassins they created in the first game. Let me explain. In many of the stories after this one, save maybe Assassin's Creed 3 because it's just so fucking awesome, it's really my favorite one, but we'll get there with time, the main characters and even ancillary characters are able to undertake these absolutely incredible feats of physicality without any training whatsoever. Hey bro, let's climb effortlessly to the top of this fucking 10-story building by scaling the walls and hopping superhumanly with no training from one wooden stub to the next. Like, this is before the story even started. Was Giovanni training Ezio to climb this way throughout his whole life? If he wasn't, which is the option that I would correctly assume is correct, then how was he able to do this? If he was, then why the fuck was he teaching his son to do these things? This, unfortunately, will be replicated in other Assassin's Creed games, with Edward and Arno being the most egregious examples. The franchise attempts to justify Edward's climbing abilities by explaining how his time as a sailor and mariner assisted in developing them. Like, what? No. You cannot air assassinate a target because you've climbed a few masts. Altair knew how to do them because he was already a master assassin. Jacob Frye could do them because he was already an assassin. Shay Cormac could do them because he was already an assassin. Connor could do them because he was free running at a very young age and trained with Achilles for like 4 or 5 years before donning his robes. I don't know, I just don't like when creators of a story cheapen their own creations by doing things like this, but whatever.
I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
This could have been remedied with perhaps not allowing players to have everything right away in the starting city. Have no viewpoints in this area, so leaps of faith are not possible until you go through the training time jump at Monteriggione. Allow players to use the hidden blade, but have some guards withstand the assassinations due to a lack of expertise on Ezio's part. Have Ezio accidentally drop his weapons during battles every once in a while, showing us that he isn't comfortable in combat yet. This could even make sense, because in the very first moment of the story, we see Ezio using hand-to-hand fighting in the street. Ezio is not trained with this weaponry, so he makes use of the tools he is familiar with, his fists. I'm not saying to implement this design choice in the entire game, just the beginning. I do want to mention a small detail I saw when Ezio performs his first assassination with Uberto. He seems to just be animalistically stabbing him. Part of me thinks this is because Ezio's hatred of him was so strong and new, but maybe it is indeed because he doesn't have much experience with the hidden blade. I'm not sure what to think here, but I like the inclusion either way. Have the characters that show themselves as assassins later in the story reveal themselves almost immediately, and deny Ezio's involvement in Brotherhood operations. You can have Ezio's drive for revenge and justice against the Templars be so strong he goes against their wishes and does everything he does in the story anyway. And with this, you can have Ezio convince them, one by one, that he has the stuff to make it in this world. This could even be the central point of the narrative. A man who is exacting his revenge on those who wronged his family, all the while having to prove to the group his family was tied to that he was worthy enough to carry on the legacy that his father had created for him and his brothers. I am extremely puzzled as to how to measure the efficiency of the Italian Brotherhood. Some small part of me enjoyed the idea that this prophet, that is Ezio, is what the assassins needed in their group. That something metaphysical brought about the most important assassin in the era because the Brotherhood was facing a decline in competency. Maybe this is the case, but I wonder what the assassins were doing all of these years. There were so many of them, and they seem to have plenty of power and influence in the region to affect change, but they don't. I'm not sure why these characters don't assist Ezio more. Sure, they help him every now and then with a name here, and a location there, and a target here, and maybe an item over there, but they don't impact the grand narrative enough. They do impact it, but not enough. How could they allow the level of corruption that has taken hold to occur in their very own country? Again, they had to wait until a young man went on a bout of revenge to inflict change on their society. Rather pathetic if you ask me.
What you've done! We didn't do it, Squidward! Our hands are clean!
Clean.
Well, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this thing.
Wouldn't that be the top?
Don't let this convince you I don't like the characters. Far from it. All I'm saying is that narratively they don't seem like master assassins who know exactly what they're doing all the time. The only person I can commend is maybe Mario, who actually assists Ezio in some of the missions and is actively pursuing the Templars on his own, as we see later in the story when the apple arrives from Cyprus. Bartolomeo is a great side character and a joy to be around that screams the rambunctious, hilarious, and badass mentor that fits perfectly in this story. And I do find Theodora and her religious, practices rather interesting too.
It depends how you understand religion, my son. It's not just men's souls that call for soothing. What is it, my son? You want to ask me something?
I do. Forgive me, but why is it you wear a nun's habit if you aren't one?
Whoever said I wasn't? Indeed, I am married to the Lord.
And yet you are also a courtesan. You run a bordello.
So, I see no contradiction. How I choose to practice my faith, what I choose to do with my body. These are my choices to make. Like many young women, I was drawn to the church, but grew disillusioned by the believers of the city. Men hold God only as an idea in their heads, not in the depth of their hearts and bodies. Men must know how to love in order to reach salvation. My girls and I provide that to our congregation. No church would agree with me, I realized, so I created my own. It may not be traditional, but men's hearts grow firmer like cases.
Among other things, I'm sure.
Very shagadelic, baby, yeah!
I was going to devote a section to this dialogue, but I don't think I should. While most of the characters are very interesting and well written, there is one that makes absolutely no sense to me. Antonio of the Thieves Guild. He is almost in the camp of so bad he's good, but not quite. He's just bad. Let's dive into the mind of this extraordinary individual.
When I remove my hand, press the cloth into her wound. Are you ready? Now! Benfalco, you work well under pressure.
First off, we meet Antonio in Venice, who is explaining to Ezio that he and his group have been tirelessly attempting to take out Emilio Barbarigo and end his cruelty. Fair enough. But he then goes on to say that the raid they attempted earlier when we arrived was so catastrophic that they need 4 years to bring themselves back to fighting strength. Moreover, the very first time we meet him is after his faction failed to accomplish their objectives. They had to appeal to some random stranger in the street to pull them out and lead them to safety. Then after we do this, he tells us that our actions are unrefined.
Don't look so surprised. We know all about you, Ser Ezio. Your work in Florence and the rest of Tuscany. Good work, too. If a little unrefined.
Dude, your men just utterly failed their mission and I saved them. But sure, please continue to lecture me on how unrefined my behavior has been. As an assassin himself, Antonio is very likely talking about all the assassinations we've been conducting around Italy before arriving to Venice. But, bro, you aren't doing anything about the Templars, so how the hell can you sit there and judge me? Later, Ezio yearns to take out the newest Templar Doge. Out of absolutely nowhere, Antonio insults Ezio and tells him he can't do it.
You have our gratitude, Ezio.
Why is it wherever you go, trouble follows?
Antonio, I trust you know why I'm here.
I imagine to rid Venice of Marco Barbarigo. But really, Ezio, we did this once already. And this new Templar Doge is a bigger culo than the last. Never mind that he never leaves the palazzo.
There is no cutscene between this time and another time where we see Antonio get even slightly annoyed with Ezio and how he conducts himself.
Theodora, meet the most talented man in all of Venezia.
Like, where the hell do you get off, dude? We've been doing nothing but fucking helping him and his little pussy-ass thief circle jerk for years now. Then, after we return from the assassination, he apologizes like it was nothing.
You must be exhausted. Come, relax.
Ah, the savior of Venezia. What can I say? Perhaps it was wrong of me to doubt so readily. Now, we'll see where all the pieces fall.
Like, what? This makes no sense. After Ezio dons his mask for the festival, Antonio doesn't seem to recognize who we are.
Antonio, we need to talk.
Ezio! Ezio Auditore!
Newsflash, it takes a little more than wearing a hat and/or glasses to fool people.
Really?
Check this out, watch. Uh-oh, I'm someone else, are you fooled? I'm not Commissioner Gordon, he's gone.
Who are you? Where's Commissioner Gordon? Oh, you're back. Commissioner, there was someone else. Superman, you saw him. There was another man. Okay. He's hiding in the shadows.
Last thing, I'm not really sure why Antonio leads a thieves guild instead of an assassin sect in Venice. You see, during this time, many of the thieves guild that we meet throughout Assassin's Creed are ones that have allied themselves with the Brotherhood, as they were quite adept at free running and knew the city intimately, which is quite cool. In the lore, these guys actually have a code they abide by in order not to piss off the assassins, and this elevates them above mere criminals running around doing whatever they wish. But why would he use allies instead of his own faction when actual Templar leaders are residing, governing, and holding office in his own city? Not one time are we given a cutscene where Ezio, maybe in the odd hours in the night, attempts to converse with Antonio about something, and we see another character from the story in the room with him. Maybe Machiavelli or even Bartolomeo in the room with Antonio, discussing something we can't hear ourselves. No, Antonio never calls on his own Brotherhood to help him and this random kid lay waste to an oppressor in their community. Makes no sense. It's puzzling, he's puzzling, and I actively dislike him. Fuck this guy.
Your work in Florence and the rest of Tuscany. Good work, too. If a little unrefined.
I know that, but you know why, Vic? Because you got your head up your culo. That's why. The fucking guy, he never tells the truth, you motherfucker.
I have a couple of problems with the overall story. Firstly, although the side characters are well written as we have discussed, some of the decisions they made with the story these characters are in are so adherently and almost obsessively tied to real historical events that it renders some of the plot points hilariously jarring. The 4-year time jump that was mentioned earlier was quite confusing, but this is when Emilio Barbarigo died in real life, so it had to happen. The attack on Forlì by the Orsi brothers meshed incredibly well with real life history. Seriously, go read it, history is awesome. But how the fuck could Machiavelli and Caterina allow one of the brothers to take the apple? I was so taken aback by the ineptitude of this Brotherhood sometimes. In the scene, we see a little blood on Machiavelli's shirt, but hardly anything else pertaining to injuries. Caterina, on the other hand, is perfectly fine. How could they let this happen? I'll tell you how. Ubisoft needed the Bonfire of the Vanities in the story, and they needed an Assassin's Creed explanation for the event. So they crafted some bullshit excuse as to why the assassins let perhaps the most important piece of Eden known at the time fall into enemy hands and get lost. It took 9 years for Ezio to return to Firenze after the apple was stolen by Savonarola. We do learn later that he realized Salvi was the monk he was after in 1494, but 3 years is still seriously a very long and confusing amount of time for Ezio not to return to Florence after learning the very guy who stole the apple lives in Florence. Because Ubisoft was so committed to sticking to real historical events, they could not allow Ezio to immediately travel there and work on retrieving the apple. Additionally, while we're there, Machiavelli tells and shows to us that Rodrigo has been sending troops here to find the apple for years now, but have evidently failed over and over.
Those bodies bear the emblem of the Borgia.
Yes. The Spaniard keeps sending his soldiers into Firenze, and Firenze keeps sending them back, usually in pieces.
Then he knows the apple is here as well. An unfortunate complication.
How could Rodrigo allow this to happen? I think he was the Pope at this point. Why don't you hire a mercenary army like you did with the Orsi brothers at Forlì and assault Florence? This guy has the Apple of Eden. Like, somebody please take this seriously. Assassins or Templars, please, somebody. For these reasons, I think it's safe to say the Assassin's Creed 2 narrative was baffling at a macro level, but quite interesting and intense at the micro level. Because if you played the game just straight through without worrying about the dates and times of these things, you never would have noticed this. This is subjectively bad though, just my opinion. Honestly, I think they flipped the narrative quality in the first and second game. The first Assassin's Creed game was so uninteresting at a micro level, following a bland and boring character meet and interact with even more bland and boring side characters, but at the macro level, told a very complex and compelling story of revisionist history. Conversely, Assassin's Creed 2 tells a very tight and well put together micro level story with a driven and charismatic protagonist on a journey with other famous and compelling side characters. But it failed to impress me at the macro level with some of the inexplicable plot points, narrative contrivances, and confusing time jumps. I want to shortly touch on Ezio's monologue at the end of the story. We see that part of the creed of the Assassins, or the Assassin's Creed, is nothing is true, everything is permitted. I've done some research online on what this means or how this can be interpreted philosophically, and read some interesting points. The most interesting, and perhaps the most accurate view, in my opinion, is that these statements are merely ways to convey certain worldviews of reality. Nothing is true simply means that the foundations of society and civilization are fragile and subject to change, decay, and upheaval. The assassins, therefore, must be the shepherds of these societies and civilizations in order to protect them from the ones that wish to usurp it. Everything is permitted is a realization the assassins come to embrace that showcases the need for some to operate outside the boundaries of the law and societal ideals of morality and ethics in order to protect it. Assassins cannot operate in the dark to serve the light if the light does not allow them to operate in the dark. The Brotherhood must do what it has to maintain the status quo with the Templars, or better yet, stay one step ahead of them. If this means breaking a precious law to do it, so be it. I find this interpretation interesting and coherent enough to accept it as headcanon. This creed will be philosophically and ethically explored in a separate video I plan on crafting soon. However, for this video, it seems that Ezio's monologue goes against the very complex idea I explained above. In the monologue, Ezio apparently takes the creed literally, as in, literally nothing is actually true.
We don't need anyone to tell us what to do. Not Savonarola, not the Medici. We are free to follow our own path. There are those who will take that freedom from us. Too many of you gladly give it. But it is our ability to choose whatever you think is true that makes us human.
Whatever you think is true. This does not work, and please pay attention because maybe I can enlighten the audience on the life-changing concept that is truth. First off, if you take this literally, the very statement "nothing is true" is contradictory, because if this statement was true, then it could not be true, because nothing is true. So, yeah. Let's be clear, there is truth and belief. These two words are very, very different. If you believe that something is true, then you are admitting that you do not know it is true. You simply have faith in the concept being actual reality. If I told you my favorite color was blue, and that I own a truck, and asked you to guess what color my truck is, you can freely choose to believe that my truck is indeed the color blue. Now, please understand, you have every right to believe this. You have an opinion on a certain idea. You do not know the answer, but you believe that you do. This is what being human is. No one person has all the right answers. Believing in something, anything, is natural and healthy. My truck is not blue, by the way. It is dark gray. Now, if you take Ezio's apparent approach to the creed, taking it literally, then your belief that my truck is blue would then become your truth. This is completely nonsensical. Your belief does not equal truth. They are not synonymous. The truth and a belief of an unknown are, although equally important, two completely separate and mutually exclusive concepts to understand. In my view, a person is unethical when they take their formed and solidified belief and turn it into a claim of truth. If you have a belief, as in you are admitting you do not know your belief to be true, but do not claim it to be true, then you are perfectly fine. But as soon as the belief is perverted into some kind of subjectively felt truth and flip it into a claim, then you have crossed the line between truth and fantasy. Apply this knowledge to your own life. What beliefs do you hold that you claim are true? The last thing I want to complain about is probably my biggest problem with the story. Everything else I have said could have been forgotten or forgiven, but neither can be done with this next point. The villains in this game are the worst. I understand that earlier I commended how they were presented to us. They enter the stage at random points to both the protagonist and player simultaneously, and they actually survive for more than one cutscene. And this is great, I stand by this point, but their writing is pathetic.
I can fix this. Spare me! Don't spare me!
The first Assassin's Creed had much to be desired gameplay, a poorly written protagonist, and perhaps a predictable central plot, but the writing for the villains was so fantastic I cannot believe they lowered their standards for their second game. My belief is that they wanted to tell a very mature, adult, and philosophically complex story in the first game, realized that adults in the early 2000s didn't play video games yet, then wanted to cater to the younger audiences by embarrassingly dumbing down their dialogue game in order to retain their audience's attention. It's quite insulting. It's absurd the differences in quality with the antagonist's writing here. We went from this,
"You're wrong, and that's why you must be put to rest."
Am I not unlike those precious books you seek to save? A source of knowledge with which you disagree, yet you're rather quick to steal my life.
A small sacrifice to save many. It is necessary.
Is it not ancient scrolls that inspire the Crusaders? That fill Salah ad-Din and his men with a sense of righteous fury? Their texts endanger others, bring death in their wake. I too was making a small sacrifice. It matters little now. Your deed is done, and so am I.
To this.
What are you and your allies planning? Is this what my father discovered? Is this why he was killed?
I'm sorry. Were you hoping for a confession?
That's why I'm here.
From this.
Look around. My district is without crime, save those committed by you and your ilk. And as for the conscription, they were not being trained to fight. They were being taught the merits of order and discipline. These things are hardly evil.
No matter how noble you believe your intentions, these acts are cruel and cannot continue.
We'll see how sweet they are, the fruits of your labors. You do not free the cities as you believe, but rather damn them. And in the end, you'll have only yourself to blame. You who speak of good intentions.
To this.
Now Firenze will judge you for what you've done.
It's over. It's all over.
From this.
What you plan is no less an illusion. To force men to follow you against their will.
Is it any less real than the phantoms the Saracens and Crusaders follow now? Those craven gods who retreat from this world that men might slaughter one another in their names? They live amongst an illusion already. I'm simply giving them another. One that demands less blood.
At least they choose these phantoms.
Or do they? Aside from the occasional convert or heretic?
It isn't right.
Ah, and now logic has left you. In its place, you embrace emotion. I am disappointed.
What's to be done then?
You will not follow me, and I cannot compel you.
And you refuse to give up this evil scheme.
It seems then we are at an impasse.
No, we are at an end.
I will miss you, Altair. You were my very best student.
To this.
What's happened here? Why the boats? I thought you sought the Doge's seat.
Just a distraction. We were meant to sail.
What?
Sail where?
I'll never tell.
Cyprus is their destination. They want...
What?
They want...
What did they do?
The only two who got decent writing was Rodrigo and Antonio Maffei, whose death monologue is like 10 seconds, but actually contains something deep in terms of emotion.
Now I will see who was right.
Where is Jacopo?
Nothing to fear, I suppose. They meet in the shadow of the Roman gods.
He's saying because he's about to die, he's going to know what comes after death. He'll know whether his belief in the divinity of the Christian God was correct, or if the Templar worldview on religion was correct. Then he comes to the conclusion that in the end, it won't really matter. If he was right about the Christian God, then he will be joining him in paradise. If he was mistaken with his belief, then nothingness will consume him anyway. It's so short, but full of emotion if one takes the time to read between the lines and think about the words being uttered. Also, it shows that Ubisoft knows how to write villains, especially because of the first game, but seemingly choose not to for some reason. Rodrigo was decently written too, which makes sense because the main villain is arguably a story's second most important character after the protagonist. I know his monologue and conversations with Ezio were quite lengthy to listen to in my story summary, but I had to milk the villains for as much content as I could, as the game provided me with almost nothing else compelling to make my audience take the narrative seriously. The entire section of the story dealing with the contest of the mask is utterly ridiculous. Honestly, it's very unclear, because after Ezio wins one of the games, we see Silvio Barbarigo and Dante Moro looking on him with disgust and worry. Every time. Do they know who Ezio is? Well, yeah, because they talk about him earlier in the story. But do they know what he looks like? Do they know he's wearing his father's assassin robe? Who knows? We are left to simply watch while each contest is won by Ezio and the two are staring at our hero with disdain. If they know who he is, why not just call 50 guards to ambush him in his next event location? If they don't know, then what the fuck do they care if this random guy gets the mask and gains entry into the ball? Then at the end, when Ezio wins, Silvio coughs at the MC and the mask is given to Dante.
With 4 games won lealmente, the winner of the Golden Mask is... The winner of the Golden Mask is Dante Moro!
This makes me think of these two idiots as James Bond villains. These are not Templars. This whole sequence is so stupid. Just so stupid. Please play it for yourself to see. It's just a story bit for 12-year-olds. Oh, and Francesco is now my second favorite Templar, behind Haytham, of course. Look at this fucking king!
Guards! No one's coming. It's just us now.
Maledetto che il diavolo ti porti! Stammi lontano! Hey!
Although I love the enemy's presentation and persistence throughout the story, their increasingly threatening presence in the whole of Italy, and their seriously interesting but seemingly corrupted view on the Templar philosophy and objectives. Individually, they left much to be desired and were quite disappointing compared to other villains we see in the franchise. On the whole, the story is fantastic from our protagonist's point of view. We inhabited a young man knocked down by a betrayal and then called to action to exact punishment on those responsible. We traveled to beautiful locations and met interesting characters along the way. We actively joined Ezio on his uncovering of the Templar grip on the Italian government and the Catholic Church. We connected to Ezio on a real and painful level, and also witnessed a man driven so much by hate and revenge decide to throw those emotions away for other, more justifiable motivations. Throughout the story, we see Ezio drift away from the revenge narrative and embrace the need for ending these Templar lives, not for causing his suffering or for personal satisfaction, but for the people of Italy who have been subjected to their corruption for years and years.
Pezzo di merda! Vorrei solo che avessi sofferto di più! Hai avuto la fine che meritavi! Spero che
Enough, Ezio! Show some respect.
Respect? After all that's happened, do you think he would have shown either of us such kindness?
You are not Fieri. Do not become him.
Get it over with, then.
No. Killing you won't bring my family back. I'm done. Nulla è reale. Tutto è lecito. Requiescat in pace.
However, we also saw more of a Brotherhood we already didn't understand and wanted to see more of that failed to do their jobs. Villains that were closer to B-movie caricatures of bad guys instead of menacing, revolting antagonists, and an overall plot that was riddled with small problems with the timeline of history due to Ubisoft having an insane obsession with sticking to this long of an historical time period. I asked my audience not to judge this critique as me hating on the game. I was so excited to talk about the good things. I started this section off with the good and ended with the bad. It's easy to assume because we're ending on a bad note here that I thought the game's story was horrible. No way! This story is action-packed and full of fantastic missions and characters that makes you not want to stop playing. Which leads me to... Like my first Assassin's Creed look-back video, I'm going to start by touching on the most infamous facet of the franchise. Its parkour, movement, and overall traversal mechanics. It's clear in this title that the mechanics and design of these parts of the game stem from the same engine as the first one. Ezio runs exactly the same and is just as fast on the ground. His climbing animations are almost identical, but are provided with more functionality by the designers. It seems Ubisoft believed Altair's climbing and traversal skills were sluggish and boring, even though these skills in real life would be extraordinary to possess. Although I appreciated the meticulous nature of Altair's overall traversal behaviors when viewed from a realistic standpoint, I can completely understand players' annoyance with the speed with which Altair performed them. Ezio, on the other hand, seems to climb much faster and fluidly, rather than methodically and carefully, and this allows players to get what they want to go sooner rather than later. There are a few structures that Ezio struggles to quickly navigate through, but largely, Ezio is feasibly able to traverse most structures much more quickly. The architecture and landscapes of both Florence and Tuscany provide Ezio with many routes to get from place to place, and these options gifted players with the ability to choose the path they desire during gameplay. There are plenty of ladders around the cities, giving players the chance to simply climb up faster and more efficiently, and also give guards routes to chase after Ezio once he escapes their clutches. Ezio is able to swim and take boats from one location to another, and this makes it much nicer to circumnavigate the maps, as players don't have to fear the automatic death by drowning Altair had to deal with in the previous title. The first Assassin's Creed game introduced revolutionary parkour and free-running gameplay, but was a chore to enjoy by the middle of the game due to the lack of fluidity and elasticity of the main hero. Here, we are given a different hero who isn't one to desire his audience to hold the same vexations, and seemingly wants to prove to us that he's able to do the same things, but with more flair and efficiency. I mentioned earlier that Florence and Tuscany were joys to navigate through, but Venice is a completely different story. I found myself cursing at the screen from the recurring frustrations I had while in the city. Even though Ezio has the outstanding ability to swim, it doesn't make traversal any more interesting. Swimming lengthens travel times and slows gameplay down to a crawl, and because Venice is fucking ensconced in water, players will find themselves in a Michael Phelps simulator constantly. This feeling is multiplied when players realize that many of the only ways to get from boroughs to other boroughs in the city are bridges, as the canals between these areas render jumping across these gaps impossible. Because of this, when I had to get to another area of the city and I was too impatient to find a fucking bridge, I simply shrugged to myself and dove into the water to swim across. This would be absolutely fine if it happened a few times, but it happened regularly, and its repetition got infuriating over a long period of gameplay. Ezio is given the chance to grow Monteriggioni's economy by investing in either art for the small city or shops to expand their services. These investments yielded monetary returns every 60 or so out-of-game minutes, so both Ezio and players had a way to receive passive income throughout gameplay without worrying about having to rely on completing missions to earn any money. This money could be used to not only further invest in these establishments, rearm your smoke bombs, knives, medicine charges, and hidden blade pistol ammo, but also purchase better armor and dye your robe a color of your choice. This part of the game was great, and early on, after learning about how these mechanics worked, I immediately started investing so I had access to the best purchases early on in the game. The only two things that were mildly irritating about this was having to return to Claudia in order to acquire your returns, which was annoying when fast travel stations were relatively sparse throughout the cities. The second, more confusing part of this was the design choice to have your monetary returns having a ceiling. There were so many occurrences of me getting notifications that I had money to retrieve from Claudia, but that the vault at Monteriggioni was full, and no more income would be made until I went to go get it.
At first, we didn't know what to do with all the money. We tried burying it, shredding it, and burning it. But in the end, we decided to just give it all away.
Come again, sir.
I'm getting back in line.
Like, I took the time and effort to invest in these things, and you're punishing me by limiting how much I can earn because I'm too busy enjoying the gameplay you provided me? Why not just have the returns accumulate? I'll go get the money when I want to. Not sure why they did this. Ezio is given more tools to work with than Altair was, as although the throwing knives make a return in this title, smoke bombs, poison, and the hidden blade pistol enter the fray. These tools make gameplay much more exciting, as any given situation ends up feeling more dynamic rather than scripted, for lack of better terms, due to the enemy AI in this game having to deal with a wider array of hostile instruments and actions from Ezio. You can tackle any area with any tool you wish, and this makes the repetitive nature of open world games as a whole less boring. All Altair had to work with was his throwing knives, and with the state of close quarter combat in that game being so absolutely miserable, players really had no other choice to avoid that misery if they didn't employ knives during gameplay. Ezio has more options, and players are given more freedom to choose how they make their way through the experience. I'm not really sure why, but I didn't use poison much in the game. Not that there was a problem with it, but I just didn't find myself relying on it in any part of the experience, be it the story or exploration. I can't even find footage for it, so I'm sorry I can't talk about it more. The hidden blade pistol was a lot of fun to use, and was a very cool addition to the series. The aiming time it takes to reliably hit a target was totally reasonable, and I never encountered a time where I was annoyed with it. I will say, however, that throwing knives were again the most useful tool at range, as they were faster and completely silent. If I were to use the pistol, not only would I have to be within a certain distance to my target, but I also had to stop and aim at the enemy. Moreover, if this enemy was in the vicinity of other enemies, I would end up getting ambushed rather easily. The smoke bombs were a joy to play with. I found myself in many situations where I either wanted to break contact with guards or wanted a brief advantage in combat, and smoke bombs fulfill both uses perfectly. Unfortunately, I do have to talk about the combat in this game as a whole. Much like the first game, combat in the second was not as bad, but is again the worst part of this title. Although players were given a third option during combat, the employment of tools to change up the gameplay, the first two options from Altair's journey make a return here. These two are either waiting and countering guards' attacks, or overwhelming your opposition with sheer force of will by attacking without pause. Guards will either block your attacks and slowly get their health whittled away, or they will be cut down by one of Ezio's counters. There are some that will flee from battle if you kill enough of their comrades too. It's weird, because damage against these guards is still inflicted even when they parry your strikes. So, although you might be engaging a tough guard who is doing his best to stand up to you, he'll still be slaughtered eventually. Additionally, if you manage to get their health down low enough, your next attack on them will be an instant kill. Not that this is a bad mechanic, but it's just icing on the boring cake that is combat in this game.
Unrefined. Stop it. Get some help.
Ezio's fighting animations are great here, and fighting with swords, his dagger, maces, clubs, and even his hidden blades are a lot of fun to watch. Much of the combat I experienced in this game was played through with either the hidden blades or while I was unarmed, and the kills were great. I do have to mention how often I use unarmed combat here, as I found it so much more efficient at killing people this way than with the multitude of items I had at my disposal. We didn't have to endlessly attack guards like this. We could wait for their attack, counter to take their weapon away, then use it to kill them. Stuff like this and the use of the smoke bombs and pistol don't forgive the boring nature of the combat, but it does make it much more interesting than that of its predecessor. The only problem I have with the hidden blades is the puzzling ability to assassinate someone in the middle of combat. My enemies know I'm here. They can see me. They have their weapons drawn, and they are ready to fight. Then I go in for a strike with my hidden blades, and I don't end up lunging at him with an attack. I end up assassinating him out of nowhere for a clean kill. This happened at seemingly random points during combat, and I had no idea what the prerequisites were to accomplishing this. You can also double assassinate targets, thanks to Ezio having two hidden blades, and this makes thinning guards out in an area before moving in much more efficient. The boss fight at the end with Rodrigo was, although very exciting narratively, extremely boring gameplay-wise. I thought we would be able to experience how an engagement between two pieces of Eden would end up looking and feeling like, but besides Ezio replicating himself to engage the Grand Master, the fight was exactly the same as other fights in the game. Ezio's duplicates are incredibly useless and contribute absolutely nothing to the fight. They end up dying hilariously after attacking every half an hour. Like I mentioned earlier, I ended up having to switch to my unarmed state in engaging with him. Like, I have so many tools, but none of them helped me in this fight. Why? Because he has the Staff of Eden? I don't know. I have no earthly idea why Rodrigo would accept a hand-to-hand fight with Ezio. He's like, what, in his 50s? And you aren't in the best shape of your life here either. Why would you risk losing this fight just for pride? We never saw any other point in the story where Rodrigo was shown to have a weakness with his pride, but sure. Try to take on this healthy man in his early 30s who has been relentlessly pursuing you for the death of his family. Doesn't really make any sense, and all of these reasons make the boss fight at the end of this story rather dull and forgettable. I have to commend, with overwhelming appreciation and happiness, the side missions that involve the sarcophaguses. Sarcophagi? Whatever. The assassin vaults that are hidden throughout the cities. Although they are hilariously positioned in places that literally anyone could see, these vaults are easily the most enjoyable parts of the game. I was in love with these missions, and got so excited whenever I found them throughout my exploration. The aforementioned fluidity of Ezio's parkour abilities come full swing here, and lend themselves to an absolutely wonderful experience over and over and over. The vaults are parkour and free-running challenges, and demand you think about your next move before acting. Many times, these challenges even add time hacks you must beat to complete them, and the experience gets even more tense, as one wrong move will not only make you lose all the progress you've gained, but have you fail the mission due to your time running out. Additionally, these timers do not come with any prompt on the screen for easy reference. The environments here are masterfully crafted and intelligently designed enough so that the experience not only feel like tests and trials to overcome, but are also incredibly intuitive and smooth. The camera pans and zooms precisely when needed, and assists making Ezio's traversal being so glorious to be a part of. I honestly felt like I was actually performing these feats, as Ezio can't do them on his own, and every inch of movement is guided by the player's hand. The only thing I have to complain about with these missions is Ubisoft's odd choice of adding enemies to these places. This inclusion of hostile resistance to the challenges didn't make them unenjoyable because it made them more difficult. It was because I was here for a parkour and traversal experience, not an arena where I was being tested on if I was adept enough to kill guards.
Unrefined.
Shut the fuck up!
Seriously, the guards in this game are so incredibly easy to deal with. Adding them to these vaults was totally unnecessary and really detracted from the experiences. If you are in a vault that houses enemy AI, you aren't focused on the climbing. You first have to clear the area, make sure nobody can shoot you or chase after you while you enjoy the gameplay, then go back to the actual climbing challenge that it was meant for. But with that said, even though some of the vaults has stupid fucking enemies to deal with, these missions were 100% the best parts of the game, and I can't wait to keep playing them in the rest of the Ezio trilogy. Assassin's Creed 2 includes a real-time method of tracking how notorious you are in-game. The top left assassin symbol fills up with red corresponding to your notoriety level, and enemy AI act accordingly. You get noticed faster and attacked more frequently when this circle is more filled, and much of what you do when this circle is empty is largely ignored by guards. There are 3 ways to get rid of your notoriety level: tearing down posters of your, I guess, sketched mugshot, bribing hecklers to shut the fuck up, and killing city officials. The bribing and killing were things I did every so often, but these guys were few and far between. I found myself tearing down posters of Ezio all the time, as they were everywhere and a more efficient way to reduce notoriety than the other methods. However, these posters were hysterically positioned in places that the public wouldn't even see them in. It's like the guards posted up these pieces of paper in places only Ezio would go, because they want him to know they were after him. Although it's hilarious in terms of realism, it makes the most sense from a design standpoint, as developers didn't want to make it too easy for players to simply get rid of this red circle as fast as they could fill it by placing it at eye level every 10 feet in the streets. The devs added the ability for Ezio to pickpocket civilian AI, and this quickly became one of my favorite ways to earn money in the beginning of the game. All you have to do is hold down your default action button near an AI avatar and you'll steal anything from $2 to $10, and if you find yourself in the middle of a large crowd, you can simply walk through it stealing hundreds of dollars in a small amount of time.
How can you make money with such a stupid idea?
And how can you not make money with such a brilliant idea?
Each act of theft brings up your notoriety meter up by like an inch, so usually I would go out, hustle for a bit, avoid the popo, and then leave to reduce my notoriety whenever it got too high.
I have something for you. A gift. This cape identifies you as a friend of the Medici. As long as you wear it, the city guards will be more tolerant of your actions.
There are side missions in this game that are a lot more engaging than they were in the first title. You have races, which were made more exciting and enjoyable to play with Ezio's smoother freerunning, beat-up challenges, which usually always involve cheating husbands, and assassination missions. These assassination missions are not just elimination missions like the first game. These missions include actual civilian AI who have dark secrets and need to be taken out. They can be walking in a crowd or browsing markets, and you need to find them and eliminate them. It's as fun as the gameplay is going to get in this game, which is above average to be sure. I do want to mention a little detail I noticed in this game. After conducting any sort of physical action, Ezio's cape will naturally displace across his shoulder and onto his back, but after a small amount of time after remaining static, Ezio will flip it back and drape it once again over his left shoulder. This hides one of his hidden blades and even one of his swords, and even though this detail is oh so small, it's a very simple way the developers gave this character more personality. Once again, this game retains the very interesting mechanics that tie into its stealth gameplay. To get a more detailed view of these mechanics, you can watch my first Assassin's Creed look back, but let's go over it shortly. All behaviors Ezio performs is divided into high profile and low profile. High profile actions make you more noticeable and attract more attention, while low profile actions assist you in making sure you stay hidden amongst the crowd. Players can choose from a variety of behaviors that either exhibit high profile or low profile actions, and this can affect how much adversity you wish to encounter while playing. If you are running around on the rooftops, jumping and hopping from rooftop to rooftop, your high profile behavior will definitely be noticed, and guards will act accordingly. If you wish not to deal with these enemies, perhaps moving across these buildings using low profile actions will sustain more amenable environments for you, which will allow the areas you navigate through to be much more favorable to assassin work. Choose wisely. And this leads into the environments of Assassin's Creed 2. I mentioned this in my first look back video, but I must repeat myself each time in order for all of these critiques to stand well enough on their own. The environments in these games are meant to look natural, not realistic. Look at the area around here. The objects in this frame are built for traversal, but don't look like anything out of the ordinary. Look at how the city is constructed here. Sure, all of these items may have not been placed in such perfect ways enough to look 100% realistic, but these environments look completely natural. The designers want to take us back into a time period we don't know or understand, but also want to generate conducive settings for free running that don't take us out of this world. The developers do an absolutely incredible job crafting these environments that both retain our imagination inside the game, but facilitate player interaction with them while in-game. The entire franchise is practically standing on this foundation. The tailing missions are easily in my top 5 events in this game. There are many times in the story that Ezio is compelled to follow and eavesdrop on Templars in order to either receive more information about these enemies or hope they lead him somewhere where more Brotherhood members are. These missions were exciting to me, mainly because they aren't the tailing missions you found yourself in the first game. Altair followed nobodies to places you didn't care about, but Ezio follows Templars to more Templars most of the time. Altair usually followed those who had no guards or enemies in proximity either, so it was unbelievably easy to simply walk right behind them to tail. But in this game, the targets have guards around them or they turn around to see if you're creeping on them. Additionally, if you feel like role-playing, you can steadily and slowly sneak around being quiet and stealthy as much as you want, and sometimes you just feel like you can inhabit Ezio himself. I do want to say that although I had a good time with these missions, it might be because I was playing the game to do this critique. I could totally understand if someone was in this just for the gameplay, absolutely dreading these missions. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Once more, the collectibles here are completely pointless. You have feathers to collect and treasure to find. Who cares? Moving on. You can hire mercenaries, thieves, and hoes in this game to distract guards. These groups were incredibly useful, and I employed them very often. Literally. Sometimes the disconnect of Ezio fighting guards all on his own with random mercenaries instead of with his assassin allies irked me. This will be corrected in the next game, but on the whole, these moments in game were just fine and they made playing it that much more enjoyable. They were simply used as more tools to employ and, in turn, allowed more ways to tackle your objectives as you see fit. The more freedom, the better in my book. The last couple of hours or so of gameplay before you go to pursue Rodrigo in the Vatican involves retrieving all of the codex pages in the country. That is, if you never found them during the story up to this point, which I didn't. These codex pages open up the secret treasury of Monteriggione and gives you not only Altair's advanced armor, but gives you the clues the Brotherhood needs to verify the Pope's plans. I was personally very annoyed I had to do this, as throughout the game I was not prioritizing these codex pages, and now, even when the story has reached its apex, I had to return to these cities and spend hours finding these things. Nevertheless, I did it, and it took some time. These codex pages are randomly spread throughout the cities they're in, and they are kept in houses protected by guards. every time. I'm not sure how this would have happened story-wise, like are Templar leaders ordering these guards to protect these documents? If so, why not just take them yourselves? Rodrigo had the Orsi mercenaries assault an entire city in an effort to get the map Katarina's deceased husband made for the Codex pages, so why wouldn't he want them himself? If the Templar leaders aren't ordering these things to be protected, then why are they? I don't know, maybe this is a nitpick, but I hate it when a game breaks story just to make a certain objective more difficult for the player. This doesn't make much sense, but I digress. As a prior infantryman myself, I understand the feeling of being an expendable resource, and seeing these guys outside the houses they're safeguarding made me feel something for them, interestingly enough. I was not going to kill these men just for a piece of paper they don't understand. So, almost every time I came up on one of these locations, I would hire hoes to go distract them so I could move in and get what I wanted. I would then walk out and away. No deaths or bloodshed. Not sure why I felt compelled to act this way, but I did nonetheless. All in all, the gameplay was very good, and running around Renaissance Italy wreaking havoc with all the tools provided by the developers makes it so fun. All the environments were great to navigate through outside of Venice, and despite the colors used looking very washed out and dull everywhere, the architecture and landscapes were gorgeous, and it's evident that the creators put a lot of work into their designs. The combat, although once again one of the worst parts of the game, was made more fun with added tools and weaponry, and the parkour was made healthier with additional speed and fluidity given to Ezio. Assassin's Creed 2 is a great game. This entry in the franchise gave us a better written, more grounded, more charismatic, and more relatable protagonist with a compelling story to follow. The environments gave us smoother free running and more interesting architecture, and the side characters were more numerous and had more impact on the narrative. The historical time period was one I absolutely adored. Although there were narrative and gameplay nitpicks I presented throughout the critique, I truly believe I was very fair in analyzing this game's highs and lows, and I implore my audience to not hold any negative takeaways too close to heart, as it is clearly evident that this is the title that exploded the series and launched it into popularity. Ezio would become so popular amongst players, along with the time period this game was set in, that developers would take both of these and run off into the sunset with both Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and Assassin's Creed Revelations, the former of which is even better than this one, and I can't wait to critique it. Until then.